Welcome everybody into another edition of Warm Weather Fans. It is Brian and Zeke here to talk about week 13 in the Sun Belt. Like I said, as our seasons kind of wind down here. Zeke, how's it going, man?
It's good, man. Not a whole lot to report. We've got 2 non-conference games this week. A couple of games that I wouldn't say mean a lot, but as we look at kind of the West race, there is still stuff to be played for. And obviously from James Madison's perspective, we record this on Sunday, so as you hear this Thursday, they're probably in the college football playoffs at this point, but they still need to solidify that place over the next couple of weeks and probably need to win out to do it.
I mean, they certainly have to beat Washington State for the committee to take them seriously. They literally have to, what you said, they have to win this game. They have to win the finale. They have to beat I think they have to beat the West winner in a pretty convincing fashion to kind of just put a stamp on it and be like, we are going. So yeah, I mean, they've got a great kind of opportunity in front of them. And like, we're a Sunbelt podcast. I'm excited about the prospect of seeing a Sunbelt team in the college football playoff, like more, obviously more than I would have with a South Florida or a Memphis or, whoever else.
Yeah.
So the thought of them matching up with who's the Ohio State or no, does the number one get a bye? I believe.
Yeah, they would play probably 5 because 1 to 4 get a bye.
Okay, so 5 would be like, well, I was going to say Alabama. Not them.
No.
I don't know.
As we record this, it would have been Georgia. But
Texas A&M?
Georgia, maybe they were 3. Maybe they move after the South Carolina game. They probably fall a little bit. It could be A&M. I think Georgia probably slots up into that top 4 with Alabama and Texas A&M's performances. So,
and Texas A&M has never lost to a Sun Belt school before, so we don't have to worry about them at all. All right, so let's talk about the Thursday night game coming up. So tonight we've got Louisiana taking on Arkansas State. It is in Jonesboro, 7:30. It's on ESPN proper. Arkansas State is a 2.5 point home favorite. I'll go ahead and tell you right now, just take the over. It's 53.5. Arkansas State does not play a lot of defense outside of the one game that they had 9 sacks. Jalen Raynor can sling it as long as he's playing. Again, you never know with these like injury reports. You get a Braylon Braxton pop up at game time and you're like, oh, okay. I didn't know it was that serious to where he just wasn't going to play. And Lunch can sling it as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of yards, a lot of points. I actually kind of like Louisiana to win here. I feel like Arkansas State does not have the infrastructure other than Corey Rucker shows up when he feels like it, but they don't have a running game to speak of. Their defense is not good. It's pretty much Jalen Raynor and Rucker when he decides he feels like playing.
Yeah, both these teams off a bye, if I'm correct. I think so. That'll be interesting. I don't know. Arkansas State's really hot. They've won, obviously barring the loss to Southern Miss, they've won 4 of their last 5, whereas Louisiana is simply not in that situation. They beat Texas State. They beat South Alabama. Actually, I was ready to give it to Arkansas.
State and Arkansas State are comparable in my mind.
Right. And as I said that out loud is kind of where I was sliding. Is I was initially ready to give this to Arkansas State because I've said pretty consistently that we know what we're going to get out of them. It's, maybe not going to be super pretty, especially from a defensive angle. And you don't know who's going to show up offensively, but you know that there's going to be points or the potential for points, especially in recent weeks. But yeah, we've spent the past 2 or 3 years really since GJ Kinney got there, comparing Texas State to Arkansas State. So I like Louisiana the more and more I say it out loud.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I also think Louisiana, because of Arkansas State's kind of deficiencies, will be able to run the ball a little bit more than they have been,
Hmm.
where it's not totally on lunch to be like the leading rusher and passer and do everything else to kind of keep them in the game.
Yeah, they have some guys that have been talented running backs in the past that just really haven't done it for them this year. Zylan Perry, Bill Davis were really a great 1-2 punch last year, and so yeah, those guys are probably slated for a pretty big game.
And we've seen earlier this season Arkansas State lay an egg in a weeknight game against South Alabama and basically win. I think it was 15-14 was the final of that one. So if they can do that on a weeknight, they can potentially lose to anyone. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I am with that. All right. So Saturday at 1:00, you've got what the game we kind of already talked about. Washington State is taking on James Madison. The game is in Harrisonburg. College game day is definitively not there. I don't have a line on this game as of today. I have lines on the other ones. So if you see anything, let me know. But
Mhm.
I don't know what to expect out of Washington State. I was not inspired by the Oregon State performance, to mention the other Pac-12 team against App earlier this year. App kind of handled them,
Mhm.
and it wasn't really that competitive. I mean, I'm looking. It's like here are Washington State's wins this season: Idaho, San Diego State, Colorado State, Toledo, and they did beat Louisiana Tech. Um, that's probably, I think Louisiana Tech's about their most impressive win at this point.
Yeah. I think going back to one of their early season losses, they got just hammered by North Texas, another one of the kind of premier G6 teams. I think James Madison rather really handles this one. I don't know if they put foot to throttle like they did last week. I think App is in a unique situation of dysfunction right now, especially at the quarterback position and especially with their babysitting head coach, I suppose, who's bringing his son or nephew onto the sideline. I like JMU comfortably here, but it's simply not going to be the boat race that we saw last week.
I think it would be borderline impossible for it to be that again. Like, does Washington State run for more than 1 yard? Yes, is my bet.
We typically look to ESPN for their initial odds. FanDuel has James Madison as 12.5-point favorites, which feels
Okay.
pretty comfortable. I think a 2-touchdown win is pretty reasonable of a result.
Yeah, that's very much in the cards considering they just beat again App 58-10 last week. So I like JMU spread. I like them straight up, all of the above, just check. They've got a lot to play for, and they've got like basically 3 weeks left of this season with this game, the finale, the Sun Belt title game. Like they know what they're kind of playing for, and they know that they can't like take their foot off the gas and be like, we
Mm-mm.
can't mail a performance in. We can't have a Georgia State game like we did earlier this year where we score 14 points. Like, just can't happen. So I think Alonzo Barnett is going to avoid that hiccup, having one of those hiccups again. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Another 1:00 kick here. Old Dominion is traveling to Statesboro to take on Georgia Southern. Old Dominion is a 9.5-point road favorite. Over under is 63.5. I don't know about this spread. I would take Old Dominion straight up, just
Mm-hmm.
if we're talking like wins and losses.
Oh yeah.
I think Georgia Southern, you even saw it last week with Collier. If he doesn't get hurt, who knows how that game turns out. But they were having trouble containing him. They historically do not do well against mobile quarterbacks. We've talked about the Marshall game for Old Dominion, the JMU game, about how those defenses were able to really hem Colton Joseph in and limit what he was able to do with his legs. Southern does not have that capability. They don't have the defensive game planning. They don't have the horses. They are going to they're going to lose this one. It's probably not going to be as bad as last season. They got killed, I think, right before Thanksgiving last year. on the road at Old Dominion, they got absolutely manhandled. I don't know if it's going to quite be that bad, but I don't anticipate this. I think this one's at least 14 points in Old Dominion's direction.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with you here. We've seen Old Dominion has had a pretty definitive cap on its offense in recent weeks. Troy, even in a game where it really slaughtered Troy, they only scored 33 points. So, but gosh, I think Georgia Southern's defense is so uniquely poor, joined only really by Georgia State throughout the rest of the country, that Old Dominion could easily, again, score their most points since they put up 47 against Coastal. They put up 45 against Virginia Tech, 54 against North Carolina Central, I think it was one of their FCS opponents. So this game isn't going to be particularly close. It's just a matter of how long until Old Dominion runs away with it.
I mentioned this in a previous episode. I think it was a couple weeks ago when Georgia Southern beat App. They were able to do the thing where they sell out to stop the run against App, and they were like daring AJ Swan to beat them. This is in that Arkansas State Southern Miss realm for Southern, where it's like, we can't sell out to stop Devin Roche and like all these other guys. Like, we have to stop Colton Joseph. And I think Old Dominion's game plan is just going to be come in, run the ball right down their throat like they did against Troy, take time off the clock, limit the amount of offensive possessions Southern gets. And if Southern brings that like 10th guy up into the box and plays one high safety, like they're just going to throw it right over their head. So this is not a good style matchup, especially for the defense that Southern has. Again, I'm not saying anything about injury. The only way that they beat Coastal to me was because Collier got injured. To me, I don't even know if they beat Old Dominion if Colton Joseph got injured, because Hinnicle coming in means they're just going to run the ball even more than they originally were. So
that might actually be a worst case scenario for them in that situation.
Right. They might get beat even worse because I think at some point Old Dominion's going to go, okay, well, we want to protect Colton Joseph because he's like a long-term investment. And with Hinnicle, it'll just be like read option, like nonstop. So yeah, that would actually be worse, I think, in my mind. 2:30 here. Marshall is traveling to the dysfunctional App State. It's in Boone, but Marshall is a 4.5-point favorite. I think Marshall runs away with this one, man. I mean, if App doesn't start JJ Cole, like I wish I knew ahead of time who was going to start at quarterback. I would assume Cole based on the way that last week went and even back to the Southern game. But Dowell Loggins is hard-headed, so he could throw AJ Swan out there again after having a sub 30% completion rate against James Madison. You know, we talked about it on the recap of the last one. Carlos Del Rio Wilson's kind of developed into a really nice passer for Marshall. I think they just keep rolling past App, who is just they're a mess both kind of on the field and on the sideline at this point.
Yeah. A big key for James Madison in the win last week was the running game. Obviously, they averaged over 6 yards a carry. Now, granted, they still threw for 300 yards, so it was a relatively balanced offensive effort. There's obviously a talent drop-off at the running back position. Marshall's leading rusher this year is Carlos Del Rio Wilson. They don't have the Rasheen Ali, the AJ Turner, or guys that even sniff that level. I mean, those guys were top of the top. They're not even looking at like a conference average running back in that stable. So I think that might hamper them to some degree, but it does not matter because it's kind of like when James Madison played Georgia State. It's like it did not matter that James Madison literally only scored 7 points because Georgia State scored 3. If Marshall can find the end zone twice or 3 times, I think they feel pretty comfortable ahead of the Mountaineers.
Also consider that App also can't run the ball. Like they really can't with Dominion and whoever else they want to throw out there. I hollered out Jakari Lewis's name after the Southern game. I don't even think he got a carry last week. So, and I know they abandoned the run pretty early because they got slaughtered, but I mean, Dubinion still notched, I think, 10 carries in that game. So they're not even giving other guys a chance, really. So I don't know. 3:30 here. Southern Miss is going to take on South Alabama. I think the line indicates at least what Vegas thinks is going to happen. I think they think Braylon Braxton's going to be out because Southern Miss is an only 2.5 point road favorite. I kind of like Southern Miss even with Landry Liddy playing here. Like, I don't think Southern Miss or South Alabama is going to be able to generate enough offense to do what Texas State did to Southern Miss last weekend.
Yeah, because with Landry Liddy at the very worst, you're bringing your quarterback play down to roughly the level of Gio Lopez, maybe a little lower. I think Gio Lopez has shown some. Or
Bishop Davenport.
Bishop Davenport, certainly not. I'm saying that out loud. Certainly not right. Certainly not Gio Lopez, but rather Bishop Davenport, who showed flashes in the early part of the year, granted against some pretty weaker opposition, FCS type guys.
Yeah.
But all that does is level the playing field. It doesn't put you far below South Alabama. I think Southern Miss is going to have a harder time than they've had in recent weeks. Obviously, excluding last week's Texas State game where they had the worst time of the whole season after Liddy had to start. But Southern Miss, I just think clears. I think we talked about how in the previous episode, how I really feel like once you strip away that top coat of paint from this Southern Miss team, that what is frankly the Marshall coat of paint, that there isn't a great underlying structure. You can get away with that with a South Alabama team whose top coat of paint is still South Alabama.
Yeah.
And then you have the South Alabama bones as well. So,
yeah, I agree. I think Southern Miss. I think Southern Miss wins a close one if Braxton doesn't play, and then if Braxton plays, obviously, I think they win by 2-3 scores at that point.
I think 10 points is probably where I'd put it. I think Southern Miss takes this one without Braylon Braxton by 10 points.
Okay. 4:00 here. Here is your game. Georgia State traveling to Troy to take on the Trojans. Troy is an 11.5 point favorite. I don't really care who plays quarterback for Georgia State. I'm taking Georgia State plus 11.5. Troy points are at a premium at this stage in the season for Troy. It doesn't matter who plays quarterback, whether it be Kilcrease or Goose Crowder. They straight up struggle to score. I know Georgia State's defense is not good, but okay, would you say objectively right now that Marshall is a better team than Troy? Would you say that?
Almost assuredly.
Okay. That was a 12-point margin of victory. Is Troy going to outscore, basically do the same thing or better? I can't really see it with the quarterback turmoil that they're going through at the moment.
I think obviously the quarterback play is the big question there, but this offense fluctuates, whereas the defense has a very, very consistent baseline of we're going to allow 5 touchdowns and a couple field goals, like 45 to 50 points, like pretty consistently. Or I'm sorry, 35 to 45 points pretty consistently this year, save for the James Madison game, which as we get further and away feels like a mirage or something that I completely dreamt of more than anything. But the offense fluctuates from week to week. I mean, you can put up 18 against Marshall, but 2-3 weeks ago against South Alabama, which again, roughly comparable defensive wise to Troy, maybe, put up 31. That is where the real inconsistencies lie. Like, at least with Georgia State, I know the defense is going to be the worst defense in the country. The offense puts, again, bottom quarter, but top of the bottom quarter performances from time to time. And again, sometimes that even came with TJ Finley. So I don't know. I really don't know. I think Troy wins this one without question, but I don't know if I'm so sold on Georgia State to cover.
I mean, think about it. If Troy scores 23 points, they're not covering the spread. They are not good enough to hold Georgia State to like 10 for an entire game. Like there will be a garbage time touchdown late, kind of what Georgia State did. What was it, 2 weeks ago, where they scored like 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter and it was like 40-14 or something. Like it was never really that close, but you know, they made it like appear it was more competitive than it really was.
I don't know. We saw Troy put up points against some pretty bad defenses. Texas State, they scored 48, 35.
Yeah, but that was like weeks ago at this point. Like they have cratered offensively since that game. I mean, they were struggling against Arkansas State.
But I'm going to push back here because you talked about in our last episode, and I think last week as well, in those 2 episodes, that the Tucker Kilcrease kind of where he popped up for like a 400-yard game, had like a 250 in there, something, had a stretch of really good games. Those were against piss poor defenses. And then he came against Arkansas State and Old Dominion. This is back to the same for Georgia State. This is back to those same levels at an even amplified level. I think Troy's going to score. I think they're going to buck the trend of the last 2 weeks and go back to that like weird October stretch where they were scoring 35 points a game.
I don't know. I mean, there's a chance that like Goose Crowder starts and like throws for under 120 yards and a pick, and you're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That would be my thing if I was gambling on this game, which I absolutely am not. Like I'm not that desperate. But my fear is that I don't know who starts at quarterback, and even with Kilcrease, it's a coin flip as to what version of him you're going to get. So
yeah, that's fair enough.
4:15 SEC Network. Coastal Carolina is traveling to Williams-Brice to take on South Carolina. South Carolina is coming off of blowing a 30-3 halftime lead to Texas A&M. Frankly, sidebar, I don't know how Shane Beamer still has a job. However, South Carolina is going to be, upset and ready to kind of make good on last week's choke that they had. Coastal Carolina is rolling out Tad Hudson against an SEC level defense. Don't love that. I think South Carolina routes them here. Like Tad Hudson was not good in the time that he played against Southern, and that was against literally what is one of the worst defenses in the country.
I think Coastal Carolina makes Lenoris Sellers look like Fernando Mendoza in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this could be a real route because Coastal was not great, but had something in Samari Collier. He brought an element. Again, he was a below average, maybe worse than the conference passer, numbers wise, but brought something very unique with his legs, both designed and out of structure. Without him, we saw it last week, and we saw it really the first 7 weeks of the season, how poor this team is without him. And then that's not to speak of some of the defensive inefficiencies. Allowed 27 against, again, a very ambiguous Georgia State offense. You allowed 47 to Old Dominion, and I think that was the week either before or after Marshall showed that there is a way to beat Old Dominion's offense. 45 points to App, 44 to Marshall. That's not good. That is not good.
The other thing with Tad Hudson playing is it totally cripples the run game outside of even what was Collier. Like we saw the weeks that Collier played, there would be like a Javin Simpkins game or Jalen John or somebody like that would step up and contribute on the ground. When you don't even have the aspect of, hey, this guy might scramble, you got, okay, this guy's a statue in the pocket, but he's not a great passer. So what are we going to focus on? The run. Like we're going to make him want to throw the ball and stay in the pocket. And like that, we've seen with Tad Hudson, like that's a recipe for disaster. So, yeah, I mean, if Hudson's not good against Southern's defense when he plays, like what hope really does he have against South Carolina? Like not much.
I have a bit of a meta question for you, and this is very much playing in the fantasy land. So, take it for what it's worth. But playing the, what is ultimately your money non-conference game, because your other non-conference were Virginia, Charlotte Southern, and East Carolina. This is the game that funds the athletic department. But you do it in the penultimate week of the regular season. You get James Madison in the season finale. Again, this is not, we're talking about 6-4, 5-2 Coastal Carolina. Good-ish, not great.
Yeah.
It feels somewhat unwise to schedule this kind of game before what could have been like the most important game of the year. Am I crazy?
Yeah, you're not crazy. I had kind of had this question, I think it was a couple weeks ago when these like non-conference stuff started back up. It was like Ole Miss played the Citadel or something like 2 weeks ago or a week ago. And I was just kind of like, wait, we're getting non-conference games like this late in the season? Like I thought that was all kind of reserved for early. And then the late half of the season is literally just conference games like back to back to back. Maybe this is sort of the leftover remnants of, I'm sure they haven't done it yet, but the SEC announced they were moving to that 8-game conference schedule when they had been at 7. I guess this is sort of a holdover from that, where it was like, we didn't know, so we kind of scheduled a team, and then we were like, we're ready to take Coastal off the schedule if we do push through this 8-game conference schedule. But it is unwise, but also, no offense to him, even with Samari Collier at full health, they were going to get rocked these last 2 games regardless. Like, you don't think South Carolina or JMU have seen a mobile quarterback that can't really throw the ball this year? Like, you think that was going to be a test for them, really? Like, no. So, like, credit to him and what he was able to accomplish this year. But, like, a guy who's completing 52% of his passes for the season was not scaring an SEC school or James Madison at any point. Like, they were like, okay, cool.
Yeah, fair enough.
We're going to eat. So, and then maybe in the last game of the night, this is the worst style matchup you could imagine. You got UL Monroe, who can't score and caps out at like 14, 16 points a week, against Texas State, who all they do is score, but they don't play defense. But it doesn't matter because UL Monroe is so offensively deficient. Texas State is an 18.5 point home favorite. I would grab Texas State in any points you gave me. If you put it at 40, I would consider it. Texas State will score a ton. The only thing you would have to be concerned about is that they don't score enough and they take their foot off the gas when it's like 38-7 or something.
We saw this game play out last week against Southern Miss, and we know how that one ended. I think that who does Texas State end the year against? Because at 4-6, they play South Alabama. This is a Texas State team that's going to end up in a bowl game.
Which is insane.
Well, enjoy the Pac-12.
Well, up until a week ago, they didn't have a conference win. So
I know we were talking all that noise about them, and they come out and lay the wood on.
They truly play like the cupcakes at the end of the season. Like, yes, the Southern Miss thing aside, with not having Braylon Braxton, I don't know how much he affects the ultimate result of that game. Who knows? Maybe in some universe it's played and we could get like a glean of how that would have went. But when you play UL Monroe and South Alabama to end the season, like, yeah, you were probably going to win those games, but are you puffing out your chest being like, yeah, baby, we're big and bad. We beat ULM and South Alabama on the way out. Like, everybody else in the conference is like, we did too. And then it's like, well, what do you have to say now? You couldn't beat Arkansas State. You couldn't beat Troy, all these schools like that you choked against. Louisiana, like all of these schools, like you lost all these games. Like, you can't walk around and be like, yeah, baby, we actually crushed it on the way out. It's like, no, you did not. Like, you cannot spin. The best PR firm in the world couldn't spin this.
Both of those games upcoming at home as well. Southern Miss was their season road finale of the year.
UL Monroe's won one conference game too. Like, it's not exactly like a murderer's row at the end of the year. So, and guess what? South Alabama, isn't there No, they have 2 conference wins. I was going to say their only conference win was last week against UL Monroe, right? So they're like
No, they beat
cannibalizing
Georgia
each other.
State.
Right. Yeah, that was the one I forgot. But again, are you puffing out your chest over either of those wins, being like we crushed it this year?
You get a gold star. All these teams at the bottom that are trading wins with one another get a gold star. And for some reason, the only team left without a gold star is Georgia State.
Well, somehow, some way, it's Hugh Jackson and Dell McGee, and not being able to identify a quarterback that can actually play. All right, so that does it for week 13. You can email the show warmweatherfans@gmail.com. You can tweet at us at warmweatherfans. You can find me on Twitter at watchthestone. Zeke, let them know where they can find you, and then we'll be out of here.
It's really easy on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Zeke Palermo, ZekePalermo.
All right, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us through week 13. We will be back to recap all these games next week and talk about the ultimate, last week of the regular season, and preview that starting next Sunday when we record these. This has been another edition of Warm Weather Fans.